The first time I saw him, I didn't know he was the UFC heavyweight champion. To me, he was just another customer, standing in the corner of my flower shop, looming awkwardly among roses and peonies as though the smell of lavender made him uncomfortable. His hoodie was pulled low, caps shadowing his eyes, but I couldn't miss the way his shoulders filled the doorway. Broad, intimidating, the kind of presence that didn't belong in a quiet little shop like mine. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, brushing pollen from my apron. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, my voice too steady for the way my pulse picked up. He glanced up, and in that instant, my stomach twisted. His gaze was sharp, dangerous even, like he was scanning an opponent across the octagon. But then he shifted, clearing his throat, and the edge softened. "I need flowers." I smiled faintly. "That's usually why people come here." A small laugh escaped him, and it startled me, because it was warm, almost shy. The contrast didn't make sense. He looked like a fighter, but he sounded like someone who'd never dared to hold a bouquet before. "For my sister," he added quickly, as if he needed to explain. "It's her birthday." I guided him toward the display of orchids, daisies, and lilies, watching as his hand hovered awkwardly above each one, like he was afraid of breaking them. His knuckles bore faint scars, the kind you don't get from accidents, the kind you earn. "Lilies?" he asked. "To funeral," I said softly. "Unless you want her to think you're planning her funeral." He smirked, and I caught the flash of a dimple that made my heart betray me with a skip. Not the vibe I'm going for. We settled on a bouquet of pink tulips, soft and hopeful, tied with a silver ribbon. He reached for his wallet, but before he could, his hoodie shifted just enough for me to glimpse the edge of a tattoo creeping down his collarbone. Bold, brutal, familiar. And then it hit me. I knew that tattoo. It was his signature, the jagged crown inked over a fist, the emblem every UFC fan recognized, the mark of Jackson Reed, the reigning champion, the undefeated Storm in the cage. I froze. He noticed. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing slightly like he was daring me to make a scene. "Don't," he cut in, voice low, firm. "Not here." Something in the way he said it made me clamp my mouth shut. I simply handed him the bouquet, fingers brushing his for the briefest second. His hand was rough, calloused, but steady. "Thanks," he muttered. And then he was gone, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. I thought that would be the end of it. A strange encounter, a secret memory I'd carry quietly. But I was wrong, because the next morning, he was back. And the next, and the next. Always at odd hours, always with an excuse. A bouquet for his coach's wife, flowers for a neighbor, something for a friend. No man needed that many bouquets in 1 week, but I didn't question him. Not directly. Instead, I noticed things. The way his eyes softened when I handed him fresh blooms, the way he lingered near the lavender, even though he never bought any, the way his hoodie never quite hid the fresh bruises on his jaw or the faint swelling around his knuckles. One night, after closing, I found a note slipped beneath the door. My name scrawled across the envelope. Inside, a single line. "Do you believe in second chances?" There was no signature, but I knew. The next time he came in, I slid the note back across the counter. "Is this yours?" He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. "Second chances at what?" I asked cautiously. He hesitated, lips parting, but then his phone buzzed, and whatever he might have said was swallowed by urgency. He left without another word, leaving me alone with questions that wouldn't stop circling. That night, I did something I shouldn't have. I searched his name, and what I found was both terrifying and heartbreaking. Headlines screamed about his dominance, his victories, his knockouts. But buried beneath the glory were shadows. Bar fights, court cases, whispers of a temper that couldn't be controlled. Photos of him bloodied, bruised, eyes wild with rage. The world called him a beast, a savage. But that wasn't the man who stood in my shop smelling lavender. The duality gnawed at me. Who was the real Jackson Reed? The answer came sooner than I expected. 2 weeks later, after another late closing, I was sweeping petals from the floor when the shop door burst open. Jackson stumbled inside, hoodie half-zipped, blood trailing from a gash above his eyebrow. "Lock it," he panted. I froze. "What?" "Lock it." His tone left no room for argument. My hands trembled as I turned the key, heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear him. He slumped against the counter, clutching his side. "Jesus, you're hurt," I whispered, rushing around to grab the first aid kit. "Don't," he hissed, catching my wrist. "I'll be fine." "You're bleeding." "I've had worse." His grip softened, but his eyes... God, his eyes. They weren't the eyes of a monster. They were scared, vulnerable, human. Against his protests, I cleaned the cut, pressing gauze gently against his skin. His breath was shallow, uneven, and when our eyes met, the air between us shifted. "I didn't mean to drag you into this," he murmured. "I just didn't know where else to go." "Why here?" I asked softly. His lips curved into the finest, saddest smile. "Because you look at me like I'm not a monster." And then before I could respond, headlights flashed across the shop window. A black SUV slowed outside, shadows moving inside. Jackson's entire body tensed. "They found me," he whispered. My blood ran cold. "Who?" He didn't answer, just grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back door. "If you want to stay safe, don't ask questions." But it was too late. I was already tangled in his world. And I had no idea that night was only the beginning. Because loving a fighter doesn't just mean watching him bleed in the cage. It means standing in the crossfire when the fight follows him home. And as his fingers tightened around mine, dragging me into the night, I realized one terrifying truth. I wasn't sure if Jackson Reed was running toward me or dragging me down with him. The night Jackson pulled me out of the shop and into the shadows, I thought it was fear that gripped my chest. But no, fear fades. What stayed was something sharper, curiosity. The gnawing need to know why the UFC champion, with the world at his feet, was running like a hunted man, dragging me with him. We ducked into an alley, his hand still locked around mine. He moved like a predator even when bleeding, every step calculated, every glance behind him precise. His hoodie was soaked where blood had seeped through, and when he finally slowed, I thought he might collapse. "You should go home," he muttered, voice hoarse. "You think I'm just going to leave you bleeding in some alley?" I shot back. His eyes flicked to me, raw and pained, as though he wasn't used to people talking back. "I don't want you in this." "Too late," I whispered. We didn't talk more that night. I patched him up in my apartment above the shop, every movement filled with tension. His phone buzzed relentlessly on the table, unknown numbers flashing again and again. He ignored them all. And then in the quiet, he told me everything. Or at least enough. That SUV, not paparazzi, not fans. It was a gambling syndicate, the kind that thrived on blood money. They wanted him to throw his next fight. He refused. They didn't take rejection well. My heart sank as the reality settled in. This wasn't just about cage fights. This was war. Over the next days, I saw a side of Jackson the world didn't, the man behind the champion. He stayed in my apartment, out of sight, helping me sweep petals off the shop floor, fumbling with watering cans like he was trying to prove he wasn't just fists and fury. We laughed. We shared late-night takeout. I found myself memorizing the curve of his smile, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. But peace never lasts in stories like ours. It started with whispers. My neighbor spotting a black SUV idling on the corner. A strange man pretending to browse roses for too long. Jackson grew restless, pacing the shop like a caged animal. "They won't stop," he said one night, voice sharp. "If they know you're helping me, I'm not afraid." "You should be." His jaw clenched, and suddenly he pulled me close, not in anger, in desperation. His breath brushed my cheek, his hands trembling against my arms. "You don't get it. If they can't control me, they'll destroy everything I care about." Reality has a cruel way of shattering moments. The next morning, a photo surfaced online. Blurry, grainy, but damning. Jackson Reed, UFC champion, kissing an unknown woman outside a flower shop. Me. The media storm was immediate. Headlines screamed about his mystery lover, speculation ran wild, and within hours, reporters were outside my shop, flashing cameras through the windows. Customers stopped coming. Orders dried up. And the worst part? The syndicate knew exactly who I was now. Jackson wanted me to leave town. He begged me to, but I refused. "This is my life, my shop, my home. I'm not running." His eyes blazed with something I couldn't name. Anger, love, fear, all tangled together. The night of his championship defense arrived. He should have been focused, but his world was crumbling. I saw it in his eyes as he wrapped his hands backstage, the weight of my safety pressing on him heavier than any opponent. "You can't lose," I whispered, touching his scarred knuckles. "I'm not afraid of losing." His gaze met mine steady. "I'm afraid of what happens if I win." The fight was brutal. Every punch landed like thunder. Every cheer drowned in my heartbeat, hammering in my ears. He fought like a man possessed, like he wasn't just defending a title, but protecting everything he loved. And when his opponent finally hit the mat, the stadium erupted. Jackson Reed remained undefeated. But the victory was short-lived. As the crowd roared, I noticed movement near the ring, men in dark suits slipping toward the back. I knew instantly. They weren't there to celebrate. They were there for him. I pushed through the chaos, my voice tearing as I screamed his name. He saw me, just as the men closed in. His jaw tightened, and in that moment, I knew. He wasn't going to run anymore. He met them head-on, fists flying, security swarming, the arena spiraling into madness. The cameras caught everything. Jackson Reed, not just as a champion, but as a man refusing to bow to anyone. By the time it was over, the syndicate men were in handcuffs, dragged out by police, tipped off by an anonymous call. Jackson stood in the center of it all, bloodied, breathing hard, but unbroken. And then his eyes found mine. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. In that look was everything. Apology, promise, love. The world called him a beast, but in that moment, he was mine. The story didn't end neatly. The press tore us apart, my shop struggled to survive, and Jackson's career hung by a thread. But when the lights faded and the headlines moved on, there we were. Two broken people who somehow found each other in the chaos. One night, as I closed the shop, he stood behind me, slipping his arms around my waist. "You still believe in second chances?" he whispered. I turned to face him, my heart steady for the first time in months. "With you? Always." It wasn't fire and desperation. It was something stronger, something unbreakable. Because even in a world built on fists and fury, sometimes love is the only fight worth winning.